Robert Mackenzie and Andy Wright, congratulations on your 2 Oscar nominations for sound editing and sound mixing Hacksaw Ridge. How did it feel when you got the news that you'd been nominated?
I was camping at the time. So I was just out of Sydney with my kids in a tent. So I was kind of oblivious, and then I started getting texts. I think the first one was from Kevin O'Connell, who just said,
"Yep,
woohoo!" And I went, oh, okay. And then they started flooding in, so I sort of snuck out of the tent without disturbing the kids and started reading all the messages and got all the news. It was pretty exciting.
And because we were both in Sydney at the time, it was around about 1 o'clock or 1 a.m. that the news came through. So a bit of a sleepless night, that one.
To say the least, yeah. It makes me feel a little better knowing that you guys were up even earlier in the morning than I was.
Right. Yeah.
Strange time for LA too, isn't it? For the announcements.
5 a.m. So, sleepless night for all of us here too. So let's talk a bit about, people ask all the time the differences between the 2 sound categories. And since you 2 are nominated in both, you could give us some kind of clarification on what the distinction between sound editing and sound mixing is.
Sure. Well, sound editing is the placement of sounds within the film and the creation of the sounds within the film as well. Whereas the sound mixing part of it is the manipulation of the sounds with everything together, the dialogue, the music, and the sound effects, with the directors and with producers in tow in creating the flow of the sound. And Robbie, you might be able to elaborate a little bit more on that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's true the lines can become blurred between the 2. So in the case of Hacksaw Ridge, we did a little bit of mixing before we got to the stage. And we were able to carry that through to the mix, which is really efficient in terms of saving time and getting the shape of the mix in order before you hit the stage, and then the director and the editor becomes used to the sort of style of mixing that you're going to be presenting. So that can be really effective with the sort of new tools that we have available.
Well, what are some of the sound challenges of a movie like Hacksaw Ridge, a war movie? I mean, it must present a lot of difficulties.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, first of all, we have to replace all of the on-set sound apart from the dialogue. We actually managed to salvage quite a bit of the dialogue, right?
Yeah.
But all of the guns, all of the explosions, all of the ricochets, all of the bullet whizzes, all of the incoming bombs, all the footsteps, everything has to be completely replaced.
All the fire.
Yeah, even the ambiences in the background. So that's, we do that on most films. So, that's always a challenge.
I think a major challenge in this respect too, if you ever look online at the size of the set that Mel and his production had to work with, it's quite small. It's only the size of about a football field. And he did wonders in making it look like the battle was bigger, but the big challenge there from a sound point of view was to make the battle feel a lot bigger as well. So to create the illusion that there's ongoing fighting all around the camera and really put us in the middle of that battlefield was quite a challenge.
Thematically and stylistically speaking, you touched on this a little bit, but I wonder if you could elaborate on it a little bit more. Obviously, I mean, there's a certain realism that you want to achieve in the sound design and the sound mix, but thematically, I mean, to put us into the perspective of the character Desmond Doss, what were your thoughts?
Well, yeah, there are, thematically, we did map out different styles of sound throughout the film. So the battle's in 3 stages. The first stage, the style is ultra realistic, ultra chaotic, the horror of war. Mel really wanted the audience to feel inside the battle. It's all very close combat, and sounds a great way to really feel it physically with the bass and the volume, and emotionally being really connected to the characters. And then we move into the second battle, which is more music driven and more sort of energy flowing, that's when the mixing shapes come in, and the music is sort of up here, and then the sound effects support that with punctuation.
Yeah, a bit more of a dramatic level.
Yeah. And then we come to the final stage, which was more lyrical, music-driven, very few hard-hitting sound effects. All the sound effects are sort of softened off, and it plays more like a ballet. So yeah, we experimented a lot with those different themes and styles throughout the mixing process.
And also, you know, certain moments in the film where we're inside Desmond's head, and you know the way that they are stylized, where he's hearing distant voices, we're feeling he's breathing very loud and very focused, and being in Desmond's headspace as he's trying to struggle with, you know, where his point of view or where his mind is at as he comes to this decision of where his faith leads him and his conviction in life.
Right. So give us some of the like nuts and bolts of creating these sounds. I mean, we all have these images of like, you know, people smashing melons to create something that is not on camera a melon smashing scene, obviously, but you know, like those bizarre little tricks that you guys use in order to create these sounds for these images. What were some of the little nuts and bolts techniques that you use?
Okay, well, one of the big ones was the sound of metal, the sound of the bullets, the sound of the shells. The Japanese refer to that Battle of Okinawa as the Typhoon of Steel. So we really wanted to highlight a lot of those metal sounds. An interesting note, we wouldn't notice this watching the film, but maybe on a repeated viewing, the shelling coming in from the ships, from the mortars, you never actually see any of that, but you hear all of it. So we really wanted to come up with some different sounds for those incoming shellings and mortars. So that was a lot of recording of different metal sounds, you know, spinning metal, hitting dumpsters, recording anything metallic that made a ringing sound. And then we'd take that, put that in the computer and add it to maybe more realistic whooshing sounds of metal whooshing past, maybe some cars, fast cars going past. There's even some sort of bee sounds in there. But we'd get a whole lot of different elements, mix them together with the metal sound sort of loud, and process that as a whoosh by. There's even Mel's voice in there. So if you listen closely to some of the shells that come past, you'll hear a roar from Mel. So we would take all sorts of things just to create something different for those incoming shelling sounds.
And one of my favourite sounds is at the start of the first battle, when we are surprised by the soldier who's in his death throes, and he kind of comes up with this kind of screaming, deathly roar, and that's about 3 or 4 different people, voices at different pitches to bring that together. So, you know, it was interesting that we tried to do it with 1 or 2 voices, and, you know, Mel always wanted more and more and more, and we got to the stage where it was, 3 or 4 voices at different pitches to try and make the audience jump out of their seats.
Right, that's interesting. You know, you mentioned earlier the dialogue track, being able to say most of the dialogue. Was that a challenge considering how much of the film was shot on location?
Yeah, well, if you split the film up into two sections, you know, the first half of the film being set in America and in Virginia and in his training camps, a lot of that dialogue was fantastically recorded, and only ADR was used for sporadic moments of you know, changing dialogue and whatnot. When we get into the battle sequences, obviously we had bigger issues. The set was located in the outskirts of Sydney in an Australian summer. Which means it's full of insect sounds and background kind of noise and things. So we had to strip a lot of that out. And we also had to ingest a bit more energy into some of the battle sequences to lift the dialogue up to a place where we knew the sound effects would be and where the music would be as well. So our cast were brilliant at injecting that energy into their performances and really allowing us a lot of space to bring the film, you know, to the place where Mel wanted it to be energy-wise. So, yeah, there was quite a bit saved, but also a lot of ADR and a rigorous process done for our cast to get there. And a big shout-out to Andrew Garfield. We put him through over 24 hours of ADR, and he never faltered once. So, amazing performance.
Indeed, yeah. You know, speaking of that first half, was there a different stylistic approach that you took to create more of an idyllic feeling to that first half of the film in your sound design?
Yeah, most definitely. The first, all of that sort of pastoral setting, we give no clue to what's to come. We had to replace all of those backgrounds, of course, because it was all shot in Sydney. So we couldn't use any of those atmospheres because there's kookaburras and all sorts of things in the background. We had to go, you know, to the Rocky Mountains and record a lot of those backgrounds to then lay in to give that a real sense of authenticity.
And also, you know, a sense of life as well. The battles in Okinawa are a place of death. Like Rob mentioned, the typhoon of steel had just killed everything pretty much except for the rats that lived in the tunnel. So we couldn't have any insect sounds. We couldn't have any life. But when we're in Virginia and when we're in the army camps, you can hear people, you can hear birds, you can hear all types of things that give us a nice, calm, you know, sense of life. And then it's just fire and wind when we're in Okinawa, and bombs.
Right. The final mix on a movie like this, where you have to combine, you know, dialogue, music, all of these sound effects of the war. Can you talk about the challenges of balancing all of that so that you hear what you need to hear when you need to hear it, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where mixing, you know, that's what mixing's all about. It's like the mixer's the conductor of the orchestra. You know, we want to hear more violins here, less of the basses there. It's really conducting all of those elements, because if you played them all at the level that they're delivered to the stage, it would be an absolute mess. So that's what we spend all of our time doing, trying the different elements. You know, if we lead with the music, do we lead with the sound effects? Do we shut the sound effects off entirely? Do we shut the music off entirely? That process is we keep revising and revising and revising. So we started mixing with Kevin O'Connell in Sydney. We did all the pre-mixing there, and then we came over to LA to do the final, and we were able to keep all of the work that we'd done all the way through, all the way to the end. It was quite a different experience for Andy and I working like that, where we're used to kind of mixing films by ourselves. So it was amazing to have someone like Kevin O'Connell, all of his years and years of experience sort of guiding the mixing process. He is right in tune with what Mel Gibson wants. He's worked with Mel a couple of times before, so he's completely in tune with what Mel wants. And Kevin can just turn to me and say, "Hey, Rob, I think we need, you know, a little less of the fire there, a little more of the guns there, a little more of the explosions there, and I'll take it with the music from here." So really conducting that process, both, you know, with his hands and sort of conducting Andy and myself as well. It was a fabulous way to work. Yeah,
it was fantastic. And attention to detail was a big thing, and Kevin was right on board with that for us. So it was exceptional for Robbie and I to be having our pass at what the details we needed to find, and then having someone else kind of say, "Hey guys, you know, maybe there's one more thing we could push or pull in this little moment just to make it a little bit more effective or a little bit more dramatic." And that was invaluable, because sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. And it just helps to have that extra set of experienced ears to push you in the right direction.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's really interesting the ways that sound can be used expressionistically. I think about the opening of the movie, where it's just all these images of battle, and all you hear is the music, and that's a completely different kind of feeling that you would get as opposed to seeing those images with the sound effects and no music, or with both, or with neither.
Yeah, that's a really interesting example. We spent a lot of time on that opening. I mean, Kevin, myself and Andy got it to a place where we thought it was absolutely right, you know, and then Mel comes in, so, I don't know, it's okay.
Maybe a bit more music.
You know, and then, I don't know, we spent a few more days just on that little section, changing it around. hey guys, what's it like if we have no sound effects through this sequence? What's it like if the music starts and drives the whole thing and then comes right down under the flame, and then we lose the music for a while? We tried all those different permutations until we know it, until we nailed it. And you kind of know when you get that balance right. It's when the images kind of, for us, they really come into focus. And everyone goes, okay, great, don't touch a thing. Yeah, no, whoa, 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 hands off. You know, we got hands on heads. Yeah, that was a fun little sequence.
I wonder if you could talk a bit more about working with Mel Gibson and what he gave you as a filmmaker that helped with your job.
Oh man, Mel is so in tune with performance, and his ear for performance was just extraordinary. Throughout the whole recording process and dialogue process, the ADR process, he was at every session. He chose the print takes and the go takes on every session, and very rarely did that change before the end of the final mix. His ability to get the actors to a place where they needed to be was phenomenal. Sometimes if the actors weren't able to do a line the way he wanted to do it, he would get up and give them a line reading and do a kind of a performance on it, and like straight away he would nail it, and the actors would have that direction to take, and they'd be able to get there. So he was an absolute pleasure to work with, completely focused on the job at hand, and his attention to performance was just outstanding.
And he was a very, very supportive director as well. He was across everything all of the way. We started on the film quite early during the edit process. He would hear everything. We'd do pre-dubs that fed into the Avid, so when he was cutting, he could hear it. He could give us feedback. It was always important stuff. It was always story stuff. It was always true to his vision, his original vision. He was also really great at adapting too. So if he'd hear something different to what he thought it would sound like, he could react to that and say, I either like it, I don't like it, can we take it further in that direction? He was always supportive, and it was absolutely incredible to work with, inspirational.
Yep.
The way he let us, you know, present stuff to him, it was always, I always felt comfortable presenting something to him, whether he loved it or didn't or whatever. He would always give constructive feedback about how we could make it better.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much, and congratulations on your nominations. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Zach.
Have a good one.